Hacking Galileo by Fenton. Overview. A first-hand account of a group of hackers in the 80s who discover alien life and save the planet, and no one knew it even happened until now. Review. Another indie pub. Back to the early days of the internet in the late 90s, 2000s, you had a number of stories you'd come across where there was a hacker base that had just enough technology, but didn't skimp out on the fiction to make the story interesting. Some of these book titles have been lost to the memory and time, but they're stories I remember reading. And Hacking Galileo was remembering these stories and adding good old nerd indie writing to the mix. This book is not going to be for everyone, and Wood has done a lot of homework, and the science and the tech of the late 80s of telephony, computers, ham radio, astrophysics are there. Homages to the early OG hackers like Kevin Mitnick, 2600, and others are scattered throughout. This is like Stranger Things, but with nerdier people and less running around with monsters. On one hand, many of these characters are too smart and too good at what they do, especially in high school, to be real. But again, I harken back to the days of reading hacker fanfiction, and this is right up there with all the characters I love to read about. I will say that the main character who is telling the story tends to get lost in the story a little. He's there, of course, and he helps to do things that he has some skill for, not being noticed, but that seems to be it. He might add details, but the other characters are doing the heavy lifting in the team. The book is also written by the main character, and the indie author gets away with the amateur look and font of the chapters, because it makes it out like one of the self-published conspiracy books you'd buy from a guy at the table by the grassy knoll in Dallas, Texas. It just adds a lot to the story and the feeling of reading it. The excess of chapters also makes the book read very quickly. There are parts where you suspend your disbelief when it comes not to just the characters, but to the plot. Going to Russia and acceptance to different groups that puts our characters on the right path is just a part of the fun. There are a couple of chapters in there where it switches to this attempt to parallel the story with a fantasy novel a friend was working on, and I just kind of hated that shift. But it's just a few pages and is done after that. The conclusion was a bit mixed, but overall, the renegades of society against the man, the system, the Fed boys, the world, I really liked that a lot. And it was a lot of fun to read with this book. This was nostalgia done right. Final grade, A.